In this video, I'm gonna show you the step-by-step process of turning this simple 3D model into a 2D cartoon character. I'm dividing the video into few parts, from the base material to adding the strokes and drawing the details with grease pencil, all in Blender. Before we start, you can download the scene file from this video on my Patreon page. Lots of other character design videos on my Gumroad and Patreon page. Check out the link in the description. Let's go. For the character, I made a fast sketch and brought it in Blender, then made a 3D model out of it using simple shapes, and as you can see, it looks boring as it doesn't have any details, but good thing is we don't need that much since most of the details gonna be washed out anyways because the shader doesn't cast any shadows. So for this art style, let's stick to a simple stylized character instead of a realistic one. First thing first, hover your mouse on the corner of the screen and drag out a new window so we can use it as our shader window. Let's start with the main model itself. Give it a new material and change it from Principled BSDF to Emission so we have a completely flat color. We don't need any shadows, nothing. Now drag a new window from the bottom this time, put it on UV editor and open up a color palette image. I linked this one in the description if you want to download it, but you can use whatever color palette you want. Now just hover your mouse over the emission color and press E to pick up the color picker and choose a color you want on the image. Let's do the same thing to the other meshes as well. I just make the beard brown just for now and give the same material to the mustache and the eyebrows. I assign a white emission material to the clothing and a brown emission for shoes, then assign the skin material to the hands too. It looks really flat. Let's add a stroke to make it more interesting. First in the materials, click on this plus icon and create a new material. Change it to emission, make it black and name it outline. Really important to enable backface culling in the settings. In the modifiers, add a solidify modifier. In the normals, enable flip. And under the material section, change the material output to 1. Now just change the thickness to the size you desire. We should add the same modifier to the other objects. To avoid doing the same thing over and over, just simply select all of the objects and select the head at last. Now over on the solidify modifier, click on this icon and copy to selected. Now all of the objects should have the same solidify modifier, but there's no stroke. That's because you need to add a second material and choose the black emission that we made earlier to all of the objects for the stroke to appear. Some parts are overlapping with the mesh and the strokes are cut off on some parts. To fix that, we can move the objects further away from the other objects to fix this problem. And some of them might have different stroke thickness, so you have to manually adjust the thickness from the solidify modifier. Right now it's completely flat and doesn't have anything going for it, so we need to get into the grease painting stage. First select the face, Shift H to hide everything else. Back to solid mode, we can see the details of the face better. Now Shift A and add a blank grease pencil. Hold Ctrl Tab and go to draw mode. Change the stroke placement to surface so we can paint straight on the surface of the mesh. We can also change the distance from the mesh. By pressing F and dragging to the right or left, you can change the size of the brush. In the stroke menu, I enable stabilize stroke so we can have a smooth looking line. And now we can start drawing the eyes. It might take a few tries, so don't get mad easily. I want to make the iris black as well, so I just draw it with the same material on the same layer, but you can do it on another layer just to be safe. And if you look at some of the images of old people, we can really see the aging lines all around the face. We can analyze these pictures and bring the most obvious aging lines to the character, like the ones under the eyelid or the lines on the forehead. To visually separate the beard from the face, we can add some nice thick lines on the borders of the beard. I do the same thing to the hair as well. Let's switch to render view to see the results, and as you can tell, we need a sclera. Select the grease pencil in the material settings, add a new material, turn off the stroke and turn on fill. We want to make this sclera white, so change the color to white. Now for it to paint under the black lines, we need to go to object data properties and make a new layer. Start painting the white part, then click on this icon to put the layer under the black lines. Now we just do it for the other eye. The skin is super pale because it's one single color. To make it better, I'm gonna add a secondary color. Create another layer, move it to the bottom. In the material settings, I add a new material, turn on fill again and disable stroke, and choose a darker skin color from the color palette and start creating this shape under the eyelids. So basically I'm adding this color to the parts where it has a slight shadows, like the bottom of the lips and under the nose, maybe some on the forehead wrinkles. We can also add another material and make it even darker to add more intense shadows. Moving on to the coat, I pick up the black material again and start drawing a line to the bottom and some random buttons to make it more cartoonish. We can also go to edit mode, click on one of the buttons and press L to select it and Shift D to duplicate and drop it somewhere else to avoid drawing every single one of them. Then for the shadows, I add another material and make it gray. Then I start drawing some random shadows behind the buttons. Make sure you're painting under the button layer. I add a simple pocket in the front and some stitch lines on the shoulders. Now to make the clothing look more like fabric, we can add some lines for the wrinkles and stretches around the armpit and other parts. Then using the same gray material, add some shadows around it to make the folds more believable. Back to the beard, it still looked too flat, so let's add some lines to show the flow of the hair. Make sure you have the stabilize stroke enabled so it would be easier to draw, but it still might be a bit tricky to get it right, so take your time on it. For the mustache, I realized making the lines this way shows the curve of the shape better, so I went with this one. I wasn't really happy with the color, so I made it blonde. Good thing about grease painting is you can change the color of the material anytime you want. We haven't done anything to the shoes yet, so I paint a random shape on the shoes. It's really hard to paint the exact same thing on the other side, so I go to edit mode, click on the left, then press L to select all, and do the same thing to the right one. Shift D to duplicate and Ctrl M with X or Y to reverse the shape and place it on the other side. We can make it more interesting by adding more accessories like glasses. I empty out the center of the cylinder, and while in edit mode I put it on the right eye and adjust the size. Select the face on the left side of the circle and push it to the center. Then extend the frame from right to the back just by extruding the faces one by one. Then add in a mirror modifier for the other side. Now just give it a subdivision by pressing Ctrl 1. I also extruded the inner part of the glasses to make a simple nose pad. Make the frame red to make it pop. Now let's make the actual glass with that cute reflection. First I add a new material, enable the fill and disable stroke. Shift A and add a new grease pencil. Change the shape to circle from the left. Draw a circle the size of the frame. Place it into the frame and duplicate it to the other side. We can now decrease the alpha from the fill for the glasses to be transparent. To add the reflection in the object data properties, add a new layer and also a new material with white color. This is gonna be the color of our reflections, so change it based on the color you want. In the draw mode, switch to box and start making a long rectangle like this. In the edit mode, select the full shape, rotate and place it in front of the glasses with a distance. In the object data properties, click on the mask icon on the layer, and under masks, click on this plus icon and select the bottom layer. You can also select the shape in the edit mode and duplicate it so you have 2 reflections or more. I still wasn't happy with the shoes, so I select some parts of it and assign the darker color to it. It's not that pretty that the character is floating in the air, so let's add a floor. I squeeze the cylinder to use as the ground. Add a new material to it. I want this one to actually cast shadows, so Shift A and add shader to RGB node and drop it in between. Also a color ramp in the front. Now we can determine the color of the floor and also the color of the reflections and shadows using these handles. You can add more handles by clicking on the plus icon, but remember, we don't want a realistic shader, so we gotta stick to few colors to achieve a stylized look. After that, I Shift A and add a new grease pencil, choosing circle as the shape and draw one without any fill, but only a black stroke, and fit it in the center. Now let's add some textures. I want to make it look more like a stylized tile flooring, so I use this great tutorial as the reference to manually add the tiles one by hand using draw brush. I break the line here and there to randomize the effect and make it look more stylized. It still looks empty, so I add a sphere and in the sculpt mode, shape it to look more like rocks. add the same shader to this one, but change the color to black and white. I change it to constant to make this style look more like the character. Then add the same stroke effect to this one as well. Now just duplicate and place it randomly across the floor. But if you get a render right now, it would look weird as heck since all of the grease pencil lines are in front. We can easily fix that by going to View Layer and turn on Z under Data. And now it is fixed. I gave it a simple turn-in animation and that's about it. I hope it was helpful. If it was, be sure to hit all of the buttons below. And check out the link in the description to download the 3D files from this character and all of the videos from other characters. See you on the next one. Peace!